Gala Rinpoche, are you there? Gala Rinpoche? Gala Rinpoche,
Hello?
are you there?
Hello?
Yes, we're hearing a lot of interference, a lot of
Oh, this is not from us.
not from you.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Hello?
It,
Yes.
hello?
We're hearing a lot of interference, a lot of
Oh, this is not from us.
not from you.
Yeah.
Hello? Yes.
Hello?
We're hearing a lot of interference, a lot of
Oh, this is not from us.
not from you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello?
We're hearing a lot of interference, a lot of
Oh, this is not from us.
not from you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello?
We're hearing a lot of interference, a lot of
Oh, this is not from us.
not from
Recording in progress.
Good morning, Katrina.
Good morning.
Okay, we can hear you well. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, but I don't hear. Oh, okay. They're getting the microphone.
Oh, dan dus kijk, dan dus. Dat had je zet, oh, je zet in deze. Deze. Dan doe je. Dat is zo. Nee, kijk je die ook komen. Je niet, die was ook eens. Oh, die.
Om Namo Manjushriye Namo Shriye Namo Namah Shriye Soha.
Ja, ja.
Good morning, Geshe-tapke Genla.
Nandro dile.
Oh, ja, nou doet de le. Zo, allemaal.
Ani losar tashi dile.
Oh, ja. Dat is de le. Goed. Ah. Oh, ja, ja. Kost het, hè? Ja, ook de tanya was. Oh, ja, ja. Oh, tamma dat is de le. Losarba. Losar mambore, maar Lumbari losar. Oh,
There are many
tamma.
different New Years, but yeah,
Ah.
Happy New Year.
Loning bele nyokta kanga sare che kanga os belami tana shi ta mezi sawa hinsa je shiwa da ta nyokta menge mezi yago che tonda choda tumba kesi ngazu de le sati je teshi tele ku ora teshi chimbe dos chi ora o ti lobi ba teshi tende rese oh ya la so e samwa teshi tele chena zambuli lo sabonal Mautu mogi mewa, sama shiti che network, malamda, oti, sama.
So yeah, tashi delay or sort of like good year to everyone. So this we should think about at this time that everything from the past year is gone. It's sort of passed away like a dream, all of the sort of bad things that may have happened. And we should put good thoughts into the new year to have peace and happiness and try to bring about all sorts of good things. So at this time of the new year, we should make sort of hopes for auspicious things to come about. Take this time to sort of set that motivation and hope for good things in the new year to get sort of past all of the bad things and not have those sorts of like famines and wars and all those kinds of things. So take this time to sort of at this new year, although we have many different new years for different cultures, make that kind of intention.
Hola.
So thank you.
Before we start with our prayers, just a quick reminder for our participants online that we're going to make an offering on the Day of Miracles, which is March 7th. And so if you'd like to join in this offering, then look for the information in the chat box. We'll begin with our prayers.
To the teacher and now transcendent destroyer, the one that's gone, full restorer, completely and fully awakened one. Perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans too, the Buddha and now transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the three worlds, winner of the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the three worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate, protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe false, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, foreland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentients.
Ore ta kese paden dawa jaba kira. Umanju bale. Yo ndi ko dewa ngwen deshi. Yo sama sigora. Dewa dewa chanja deba. Yo ndi ko dewa ngwen deshi. Minam dewa lonje memela. Minam je dewa de karchen yongorse. Negab je dewa de lonje. Yatung nemele sobote zuko. Injin zomba chiku yora. Esa me Tulu yagu kuya me tato. Nasa chuna me saya me. Ni tunji manzum na. Lule akanga yungu yordo. ni samla ka yung go ta mi yawa de nega ke lonju e ku ne me la so ba o te su pu sum so ba chi nge ko ye ko ta chi de chi ko re song go minam te wa lonju me me la ya ko kan je sum ba ne shi na ne le lonju la so ba so u me lam so che dra tra ke ba che ta me ba de shi ni chu shi ke yo ma so ye yo tra ke ba che lu so me to kan ye yo me chi ya ba ke ma do de ke ba che ne de yo ma lo ko e ku ne me la so minam te wa lonju me me la ne ko chi te wa de lonju me na ni yo yo ma de lonju ya bu yo de kar she ni go re se na so de ya nga ma nam se so se bo ya bu ta yo na in de bu ne ga ge ken do so lam ro ro che ti se ne lonju shem bu lonju ya bu yo go ra nga zu ma ba na ya yo chi ma yo ba shi sha shi she yo do ma ba na ke wa chi ma nam so ang bo le me le re shi ke be na ka wa ke be na so so te sa ta ne le lonju la so ba te zo yin zomba chi ku yo ra zo te yin zomba chi me na ti ka le ko ra sam lo ta te ne yo da chi da ti le cha chi we sam lo ko to ye ko yo ma o te de me nam te wa lonju me me la lonju ja ne chi le jo wo san ji chom de de so ye ju de ko so se yo nga ma nam so ba ta ne yin je bu le te ne ta da ra le so lonju to so ne ka ki ken to so ya bu pu sam so ba chi ne so yo da o ti na sta ma ba na ya lonju chi bu ku ye na anda rang ge lonju jan le chi ba ta wa le so lonju de pe chu che bu yo da lonju de ko ye ne nya che rang ge chu ma tu me le chu ma tu che ta ne ko nya de rang de ma pe chu si wa ma ra rang ge lonju jan le ya chi ba ta si de sa ya ku jo le che ba pe yo lab de cha yo re wa men ga cha yo re me le chi zo le pe be le ga ma bo che yo da o ti su o ti de che ba ne lonju de su su lonju de la pe ba na shi che tin de bu ma ba ne yo de su tang ye ti ma do che le ti
So, here to begin with, as the great scholar Chandrakirti has said in his entry to the middle way, all sentient beings, all beings want to have happiness, but we can't have happiness without possessions, without sort of things, having the things that we need. When it comes to being a human being or any kind of being, we all want to have happiness, and we need temporarily at least to have the kind of things necessary to sustain ourselves, to have happiness. We need to have the kind of conducive conditions. If we don't, say, have shelter, or if we don't have clothing and we're really cold, if we don't have food and we're starving, there's no way that we can experience happiness. And so when it comes to the kind of necessities, the things that we need, they are the sort of source of these our temporary sort of happiness. So when it comes to anything, the wealth and possessions that we have, as the Buddha always advocates, we need to have a kind of middle way. We don't need to have like extensive possessions and wealth and food and clothing and so forth. But if we are totally bereft of any sort of wealth and possessions, if we don't have somewhere to live, we don't have enough to sustain our body, then it's going to create problems. We're not able to, say, accomplish the Dharma if we are constantly worried about having enough, being able to sustain ourselves. So this verse says, again, that all beings want to have happiness, and there's no way to have happiness in a temporary sense without having possessions. And so knowing that wealth, our possessions, come from generosity, the Buddha first taught generosity. So the wealth, the things that we have, the kind of conducive conditions that we enjoy in this life are the result of the generosity that we practiced in our previous lives. And so in terms of thinking about our future lives, even if we are, say, born as a human, we need to have the kind of good circumstances finances to be able to practice the Dharma. We need to have a roof over our head and clothing and food and so forth. So thinking about the future, then we should be thinking about being generous. The kind of wealth and possessions that we have in this life are not something, again, that we should sort of hoard and build up, but rather we need to use them in order to create those kinds of causes to have this again in the future. So making offerings, doing things like building schools or hospitals, doing those kinds of projects that are beneficial to society, thinking about the good of others. If we use our wealth, our possessions in that way, then that is how we can ensure that in the future, again, we will have these kinds of conducive conditions to practice.
야. 어디 인도 가서 그래. 그냥 미치게 어떤도 떠들어와. 떤도 야고 시작좀 인주리도 정말 좋지. 니냐제 대 양자선 밤마다나. 그 펠리아를 시고 말와. 그 냐제 된 선대 냐데는 야 펠리아요 말. 이 선대 양자 파다 샤니 생각 가서 답샤나. 일에 마음 양야 펠리온 거도. 안텔레 자셔르 셔르 됐다만에. 어디 숨겨놔. Bata si to lonju chunga ti pa chi bata na so de ma so pa tab gi ora ti ni ti che le ya lonju ma bo yo et de en to yo ti ndi ka so de ran du chu na le ya che chim ba chang ma to me se dil ya to na me nge da ba o ti me se de ti tu la sam lo me nge ro ti de o ma ra ti de ma ju te shi chen bin do si do ga o ti ne le yo gu do me se de ko ta shi bo 다시 봤어요. 다 레고 야구여서 무슨 소리. 소다 된다 라베 소다네스. 어디 발로세다. 라베 랑시 진지메지 소시메지. 지졸 팬토 레가 진지메지. 막고. 이 다시 버리 레베. 그래서 이 나신 남기네고 리베네앙알 장고레세 소리 벌 장고레 소리 벌 장고레 ele changures tezuka nekam kudelia changures ngwa mesi kete mesi de kange shebichi yona ni chöda shida samlo seto bushida tang toye ko yo marwa aye me toye me ti janja samlo ko te gre mato kenda samlo ko te yo mar yende ko negab ge so studente ko yaburachi dan dribichi yona ne ko choshita choshi mena ni driye che yo marwa haje yona tanda mar sen so che yo mar indico drive się kuyor i mena ni tele lagbe chuta champagne samlo kashi mushida kortwe yomar yugi shikura yomar so te kange tira kanja samlo tande o ti indico kas donale sumbana shinche ripene ngaga tangdu ripachi bumayba kenda tu sole changores nega ko kanyeta inti mine me bata yumaybe showa kyabeta o tezule ko na chegure se sumutwa o ti du karsore o tende ke chimbuchine a chochine chiduza ko su tewa ya lonjo ya tanda tanda chimbata kurside yo chimba menge samlura chene yebede mebe se senge su no modo de shitwa so lonjo ko orse lonjo ko ne chimbata wasde yo de mil rogwa chi zol tonseneenzare doa anganju de tewa chingmarwa 치럽지 삼을 당겨 와라. 어떻게 인디 거서서 노지 무슨 소가 여나. 노지 무슨 소가 매나 동심 장소도. 또 나야 돼 말을. 미직 심부터는 어디 아구려서 갈아 되는 게 되는 제고 아sam자. 미심부터 알이야. 가와 거면 예수이라고 남친 버려. 네가 삼자잖아. 소소의 냠도 살아. 여사 요도. 야, 이제
So, therefore, if we are like a human, it's like, for example, if you plant a crop, if you plant a crop and get a good harvest from that, if you save all of the grain and sort of hoard it, then there's no way that you can increase the kind of grain that you have. You have to take some of that and plant it as seeds in order to bring about a good harvest in the future, in order to increase that. And so here, we need to use the kind of wealth and possessions that we have in order to plant the seeds for the future, in order to be able to create the kind of causes for conducive conditions for practice. So again, it is dependent upon, as it says in this the Sutra of Great Auspiciousness, we need to have the kind of skills to be able to benefit others in society. In terms of the sort of auspiciousness in this life, we need to learn those kinds of sciences and trades like we've talked about before. Learning and training in the 5 sciences is really important to being able to provide the needs of others, like in terms of housing or healing them and so forth. And if we don't have those kinds of things that are necessary to alleviate our kind of temporary ailments, if we don't have any food, we don't have any clothes, we can't think beyond those difficulties. We can't think about the Dharma if we're just constantly trying to take care of ourselves. But on the other hand, we need a sense of like satiation. When we have some degree of wealth, we shouldn't be wanting always more and more and more. And that way we'll never feel sort of satiated or satisfied if we are lacking that kind of mindset. And so, here, then the basis of Dharma is being able to have that kind of enough to be able to practice. So as it is taught in the sutra, learning the 5 sciences in order to be able to benefit others, in order to be able to heal them and build them houses and so forth. This is an important kind of skill and learning in order to be able to create those kinds of seeds for the future. And so it might seem a little bit strange to say like, well, by thinking about our future of having possessions, we engage in generosity. So you're giving away what you have now in order to like have again in the future. But this is an important kind of practice such that we're able again to have that basis to practice the Dharma. And it's also said that if we don't have the kind of material wealth and possessions to be able to give away, just by rejoicing in the sort of generosity of others, we too are able to gain the good results from that by genuinely rejoicing in the kind of generosity that others participate in.
Oh yeah. No, there is any talk. Over there. In the touch and but on the China. In being able to Mama Banayako, Long Chimbumingo Yoda. Or tea indeed. The man, there was a man, the hard and winter, she was the margin. And do the Zilkina and Long Yanako, a system to add a chaviardo. I should entertain a long chamber child in the order. So picture check a Yomarashida. Or tea in the Carsoda. Long Sendilia, Chimbatan la sopa, Chimbachanjamare, and the Chimbatan, Tinjebu Mahombanaya, means that the Lutin Yabuchicores. In the Sudim Decation Burus, nobody Sudim Songudwa. Nadia Machu Song, the Tambu Chimbacation Burese, Roa, and Dele Cosus, Sodin Cation Burus, in the Chimana Station Burus, Negative. It's Batayata, in the Cation. But the Chimandelia, Yoya was like Tashimachena, and do the Chilkin Yakin and the Cochimbata, the Drebu, Yabuchimi, Yomarto. Long Yabuchi to Yama. Be longer than the drawing annas, Majoba. Be longer and deputy and drawing about Yoshimadi. It me Abumaso, Mikichubung Chudimrida. Yell saw upon but a pember to bet him. Mikichubung Chudim the Abumaso chair. Then you are yet out and rid of the digital case on us. The Ranga Chimbata taking deputy. Yoshimadi, your membership call a minsona. Should have been my shared. Ludrabin the theatre and did Oyakashan norm Casora, Longi Chamberton the Tigor. In a code patient share that you should have thank you, Omar. Iomar. What in Ashi? In Dele Chamberton and Longi and table Mahomban and mean duty. Lutin Yabuchi tell a me to Dahlia. What I mean, you are some bush to West. It and Dahlia shoot him the case. Make it you park, you are to Timty. Or the shall saw upon with him the case. Nobody let Sudim Songua. And would the listen bus, catching Boris Songora. And if Sudim Songora, Sudim Masona, other me, your son Butogumari. In a chimbe deputy, Yabuchi, your Chimaya, Gendra, on the theatre, long at the Abuyongomara. It is on Kendele ngaranzo soba kume samde shirab yawala kumba chayuna ya. Yawa chayuna tin drebudu yabu chi miye tandala chudim sungayde migi chubungi chudim sungayde peke shimbarwa. Iki sunani jema lada milikini yangya kendele changbe shirab ta. Tingi jingda chi karili changi yunay tizu maungba tin drebudu yangya yabu chayne miye gandhi kugabi warwa. Oti yindi kendele kaan changba chabada maungba la ya tin drebu yabu chi pechu she yabu yunay tandala ya jema tewadi yabu chi lango res. Ye tandala migi chupangbe chudim di keshimbo. Migi wa chu shena nyesole kiwari. Te paana kiwa chutumna tata mii kiwa sambutu. Chudim di keshimbo res. Nibadali te songpa.
Mm. So here, if we practice generosity, then that will ripen in this result of having possessions, having wealth in the future. But we want that to ripen on the basis of a rebirth as a human or a god, a good rebirth, in order that we're able to use that well again. If we are to say be reborn as something like an animal, even if we have the kind of causes to ripen into having wealth and possessions, that doesn't really benefit that animal. They don't really know how to use those sorts of wealth and possessions in order to be able to create benefit again for the future. So we really need to have the results of our generosity ripen on a good rebirth. So being able to have the kind of results that allow us to sustain ourselves, to be able to survive in the future, but we need to make an effort to gain the kind of rebirth that we want that to ripen on. So here again, it's important, as is stressed second by Chandrakirti, to practice ethical conduct. So he has a verse in the entry to the middle way which explains that if you have the result of generosity ripen into a bad rebirth, then that's something that's basically wasted. If we don't guard our ethical conduct well, the ethics of not harming others, of abandoning the 10 non-virtues, of engaging in virtuous actions, then we can't secure a good rebirth as a human or a god. And so even if we have created the kind of causes for having what we need in the future, we will have that ripen on a rebirth as, say, like an animal, where they don't know how to use that sort of wealth and possessions in the service of the future. So it's really critical that we have this kind of basis of ethical conduct, the ethics of abandoning the 10 non-virtues and engaging in the 10 virtuous actions. Because if you don't have good ethical conduct, there's no way to secure the kind of basis that allows you to continue to improve and develop the sort of qualities that you have in the past, whether it be something like generosity or things like patience and concentration and our wisdom and so forth. It's really important that we have that basis of ethical conduct that allows us to gain the sort of rebirth wherein we can continue to develop these sorts of things like meditative stabilization or wisdom. So if we abandon this basis of ethics, then there's no way that any of the other results will ripen in a good way. So in addition to generosity, it's stressed that second, we need ethical conduct in order to secure the kind of good rebirth that can allow us to use those other kinds of causes that we have created.
Oh yeah. I didn't do so. Belonju tane drong ena shibatane. Jebu mede. Chuti masuna drong embal mbeyena. Ne te bejo yabu tamashin bejo ne kone konde peyade umarwa. Tandon masu so mada bejo ne yade tawa bejo jebu menche tolweri. Ina shingara zo mahomba ya. So chindelia. Ebe kewa tan ten jebu to yabu chi lonche ya tandalia. Kewa sambu chudim migi chubun chudim songa de keshimbu. Songa. Iba chudim songa. Sumba del caro sungurse, soba sumgura. Soba. Oh, tene. Indi chebe, kevato su kisum sopan trebu mahupana yabuchi kone kondo pe tundalia. Yawa sambuchi liangni, titendo yangya kone kondo pe tapsi. Yes. Ti yonga chebalia. Rangi shenla tsawa pane sutum yabusung yona ya. Shenji sosule. Deba tangshi mecheba, neba chebala soba sigra. Mendo chetan deba ye kechebale 이미테베스 세단테 따죠. 그 소소 나오면 저다 신다수 네버체바다 랑다 랑게 초월시 never share this Samlutan Mitumba, Evala Sobat in this Samlutani. Nick, ye Medeva Shabina, Condor Sim Truchuna, Ajo de Grand Medeva Shaba the Susan Sim Trusuna, the Condor Sangura. O Tizanko, Eva Congurese, Eva Magumna, Tagicibata, said the Lake Wasabatizo, Eroa, Nick Yoachima, Yoyabuchi Yonati, never so yora. Yawasa Shabat, Chimbatawata, Ujula Chibata, and let Chimbatawala Sopa. Yawachebat to Mabuja Jumdu Yare. Only one to Tana, Seba Magum Jacondo Sena, Marasa Shebek, Yawachimba La Soba, or Jim Songa La Soba, Mabuchi Jumdu Yare. Onto the lake, Chishu to Tiara, Grand Drebu to Shade Yimbishek, Yawangema Shabat to the Melch. Narazum Mirab Chili, Namdi Yabushirache Papento. Imako Condo says you want to ship it and go in Chedura, Millet in the Yogudua. Yawuchena go Condo Savashidachena, Imako in Chambusabi Maras who come the Chanki Chagdua. What in a shit. I don't know. The Subagation Bures, it is so good. But Sutim so until a ten, Kesat so much on Bashe. Yabuchi Yane, yes, Kawadi Yabuchi Tabucha Yamachu. But you don't know. Nisu Su never Chavata Mendeba Chavachuna, Sava Congress, Sava Magumda, Nelen Sigra. It's how I'm ever the Ungumara. And it's not those Chavashira much Balem. Susu Magri Karianeko, and never Chagrito. You do some battleria, it's Sava combatation, but it's
So again, if the results of our generosity ripen on a bad rebirth, it's sort of like we don't know how to use that properly. We don't know how to use that wealth and possessions, the things that we need, in order to continue to gain good rebirths and enjoy the sort of results of our virtuous actions in the past. So if we want to be able to enjoy the results of those virtues and also continue to develop them, we need to have ethical conduct. We need to have that which creates the basis that gets us that rebirth, by which we are then able to continue to develop our qualities. So third, then, it's important to have patience. If we are able to get a good rebirth through the practice of ethical conduct and through generosity have all of the possessions, the thing that we need is to not have destroyed those kinds of virtues through our anger. So when it comes to anger, as Shantideva has explained, it's really this sense of getting unhappy. Our mind gets disturbed by this unhappiness when, say, there are obstacles to getting what we want, or our side getting what we want, or our enemies get good things. That kind of disturbance creates this unhappiness that then leads us to get angry. And when we get angry, when we give in to that, that kind of mind destroys whatever sort of virtues that we have accumulated in the past. All of those virtues that we have accumulated through generosity or through ethical conduct, all of those can be destroyed through a moment of anger. So both, there is, again, a sort of fact that anger will have its own bad result right now, but it's also possible to destroy those virtues that we have accumulated in this and previous lives. We can imagine if there's someone that's really has done some great kindness for you, but then they get really angry. You tend not to remember that great kindness, but rather that anger sort of negates everything that they've done. And that's how it is with our virtues. We may have accumulated a lot of virtues, but if we get angry, we destroy those. So we need to take care of the virtues that we've accumulated, sort of sustain them through the practice of patience. And really, patience is what allows us to preserve our ethical conduct. When we get rid of our patience or lose our patience, we then engage in harm. That attitude of non-harm gets undermined, and we then feel anger toward others and jealousy and so forth. So third, then, it's important to have patience such that whatever kind of virtues we are making effort at are not destroyed by our anger.
Oh, yeah. It's a come go back to San Shade in the Sunguda, Majubakas, Dawara. Oh, Nika. Okay, Saba, come Kogurese. 어디 공급에 주전 가르친 거라서 이번 리온 거대 준주가 준주가 선거도 시단 답이 이거 매셔라 온도더라 그때 이거 매셔 틀에 섭취 이거 매셔 온도나 그래서는 이게 나를 사셔백해서 뭐 수준 블랙서 뭐 개와 사셔 마음부터 좀 그거래 온도서도 아마 파 야부 제박이 사셔백 마음부터 좀 그거는 제부 미에 매서 셔요래 제나도 이거 매셔 제나 콘도 때문에 이거 섭취 아래서는 콘도 대 나를 사셔백 뭐 수준 서발서 뭐 그래서 사셔백 좀 그거래 제부 미에 매서 tene sosu chen dele rami ki ba shen mi ki ba kanga jungsa ge shu ji re da kondu sebe na ne nang mi da so da ka sa ga da nga zo ha ko te do dambule na kondu wa ge chi chi chu cha do che che mi ma bo ka te ina ti chi do se tu ti kar chi ge ne chi do yin de ko ar sa sha be te ba ke ha tu zo pa jom chen dele rang she kanga pong le chong ge tu nge ten ge tu shu de kondu de yin che ra seba tabi Shetatabi tikwa meese. Swabatabi katu meese. Kondi wandu maadanga checha swaba komtuba ina. Swaba nashin kitini katu kwa kiawa chubeke, kiawa kale chayakti. Swaba le lakwashi meese wari. Karisini kiawa nyamchugu yo marwa. Swaba komni nyingdu chiru dhugu yordo. Kondu libe pen lo dokso kiawa kankati yungu yordo. Sebadabu katume. Tewe sola nendendo nazo suji tembarsha. Kusen tewe na kondu dan seba nyigna ne kondu de doshu de rese. Seba de taber soso ke chisho de rese mesena. Seba yabu kumgi na ne ka trandi mandi to chuna kanga sotu girwa. Nanda dang marwa. Soso semgi soso samtana soso tewa netu. Chilo drame de to chumba yina. Iga sem chugu mare. Sem pe yi me dewa cha tende yungu de sotu girwa. 그도 이나 고 기부제 연구요. 그래서 어디 누가 왜 솔았는데도 나도 수지 땜버샤 정도. 이따 간데서 서바 간데서 공부를 메기수 우자 제외는 서바 검토고 말바스나 서바 검토고 됐어. 와 콘도 라야게 주지와래 콘도 주데 파카샤게나 콘도 영토고 말해서 그거라. 콘도 주데 가래서나 mendochedan dobaye kekje bale chunga yime tewas soso nawa mendroa chedan soso choge lega soso choge dobala mengen che sona ya ne dobala barche che sona soso lega che chilo ko kyen che sona ana soso da mendo ba che sona siwa mendo chedan dobaye kekje ne ile barche dan ko doasa ko te barche na sambana shi che ma so asam tene konzo te me ngazu lega chede chelo ko parshi che so asam rang deba tele mitum ba che so mega yongo ra mendo che dan deba ye kekshe bale chu kekshe so samne yime de wa ne yime de wa che nam sa chu do re so sem nam shin da shi ko pene me da che ne so ba kom cha ne chu ma ro ate ondo sa ya shi chu no ko ngazu tele che do sa Semba migi bachara, namjuna shi semba shide che te ad mav so sa, sem tro sare. Sem tro sare ta kondu sangura. Yime te wasigdo. Semba migi bachara. Semba migi bachara ta kondu san ko le kar log do sa samta. Ne ram migi basa. Wa. Ta top che de jenen. To semba migi bachete te ra. To so randu che che migi. Ile neba chere chini rangi rogbata nangmi miki basa. Ile neba chere chini chizo nala miki basa. Ile neba chere chini zambuli kora tuksu. Kanga chi shaktoa. Kondu sayana. Indu karsi. Imi tewe sani, imi tewa. Imi tewe sanyi nesi. Imi tewa de kondu say kala re chara. Imi tewa de kondu topjegi me re tatu. Topjegi me. Pine tosi tamadri cheda sosemba miki bachaya de. Kondu sayagi ko. Topjegi me nang shiri esi go. Imi tewe sanyi nesi. Shetan de tanzu. Ni shetan kondu say. 아니 민네가 맹게지는 소소소소랑 두제 콘도세 제대가 네가 연계시는 낭미 주주 로봇 주주 로봇 주주 주저 주주 잠블레 주주 어때 대견 신부용 그래서 제단 당부 안좀 내셔다 좀 현지 대화다 이기수 반좀 그래서 제단한테 단좀 어디 이제 다 콘도 가야 주대 가르스네 또좀 맨데버 중앙이나야 이제 semhadu bache urese I medewa semba mikibashi yo marka duina sem kibushi te urese duina sem kibushi te na ko sem mekibaso e kyunye chuna pasi kina to gara ko se tandi mende so sem mende chena ko sem tutu ma tu shojo je te na tin tu yongro ya ota dishila
No. So here, then, the kind of reason that we need to have patience, this is described in Chandrakirti's entry to the middle way, as well as in Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. In the first verse of his chapter on patience, he says there's no sort of evil, there's no non-virtue like anger, like hatred, and there's no austerity like patience, because all of the kind of virtues that we have accumulated are destroyed by anger. Anger has the capacity to prevent them from bringing about their ripening results. Whatever kind of virtues that we have done through generosity and ethics and previously accumulated, anger has the ability to prevent them, to destroy them from bringing forth the kind of good results that they should bring. And so here in this way, anger gives a bad result in that it makes us unhappy. It creates bad results in the temporary sense, but it also undermines, it destroys those virtues that we have accumulated in the past. And so when we get unhappy, that makes us unhappy. That's where we spread that unhappiness to others. And then it can cause us to start harming others, even going to the point of killing them and things like that. And so basically, anger brings ruin to ourselves and to others. This is really why it is referred to as the greatest kind of evil or negativity. And there's no austerity like patience in that it isn't the kind of effort that it takes to prevent ourselves from getting angry is something that isn't easy. But over time, we can gain a kind of strength of mind through our practice, through like training ourselves to be able to bear with things. We can gain this kind of strength of mind over time. And so anger is basically the worst. It is something that destroys any kind of positive we have accumulated. And patience is extremely important. If we are able to have patience such that our mind isn't disturbed when things don't go our way or aren't just right, this is something that can allow us to always remain in this kind of peaceful state. So it's extremely important, as Shantideva says in another verse, that because patience is so powerful, it's so important, we should really make an effort by various methods to practice patience. And really, we are able to do so. All of us can practice patience, but we need to examine how it is that this process of getting angry arises. And again, described by Shantideva, he explains that when something unwanted happens, or when we see others as acting as an obstacle to getting what we want, like they are acting as preventing us from getting those kinds of good conditions, when those sorts of situations happen, where there's some kind of obstacle to our happiness or some sort of, we don't get what we want, something bad happens, this basically allows us, causes our minds to become unhappy, to become disturbed. And once we get into that kind of disturbed state, that unhappiness takes over. We then kind of ruminate on whatever happened, and we think maybe about retaliation or how to get back at someone. And when we are unhappy, when we allow our minds to become disturbed in that way, we create unhappiness for our friends and our family. We can disturb their minds. And that disturbance, that kind of unhappiness spreads all the way out into society. So this sort of mental unhappiness is described as fuel, as like the food that increases our anger. It's what gives strength and allows that anger to grow more and more. So even if we can't kind of like hurt the other person or whatever sort of situation it is that caused our anger, we are going to cause disturbance within ourselves and within those around us. And so basically, anger first destroys our own happiness, then that of others, as well as destroying the kind of virtues that we have accumulated created in the past. So here, patience, it's extremely important to stop the mind before it becomes disturbed. If something unwanted happens, or if there's some kind of obstacle to gaining what we want, we shouldn't allow ourselves to become disturbed, to get that mental unhappiness, which then acts as fuel for our anger.
오야 다 ton다고 기메도야 요야 소유 주도 가르스는 직내 취재들에서 그거라. 이대 취재 요랑하죠. 그래서 벤저르지 토엘 딜 파르체에서 섬 이마토나 메가치 토나 아타투스테 마코나 마토나 메가치 시오라. 미기 소솔 에버리스트스는 가타치 또스 리마dim 메르라 당기세르트스는 메가치 거라. 이제 년부치 тө스는 소소 나와드트스는 가부제 이면은 마가치 미기 차거라. 어 대조 왕게 거라. 대조 강가 시작해 신부 말이 쓴 거라. 그래서 셈비시디지 대대 신부. 그래서 enjo ko nyamguda tosto de yon jongsigira ina ko ko le yor kabri ya yor kabri to yon bitin mi kanga yongure samsastram gurmado tanga jangjang chi chung sa sibisene sem chudura ke je shanda to ne so so ishira ka ke yomado me na ma ra tur do ne ke yomado kuranzu labden labre so so ya ga ina tu ina karene tire te yor te ta ya de mer ta di ga zu tanga ke chimbu yora 미주치 떠러리스타는 가셔죠. 지지지 쓰기도서 아마 현대시 쓰기시는 마가지 현대시 쓰기시는 가루라. 미현대시 그 알을 쓰기도 하시네. 그러니까 여기도 오늘 전에 너에게 다시 주나 계시게 용기와 그때 너에게 요 말에서 소소샘 근데가 서셔를 어디든지 내 저기에 가셔죠. 또 저저 내가 메르탄 메가시 미지시디 시비지 따게 뭐 소소 야구 전에 거기 내 야구를 되더라. 미지 가르랍되네 미시시 밀메시 술레시 가셔 야구를 시기 가셔 두부를 세게 요 말어 가르시네세 디 코라스라 하러 어딘데 삼루단 다셈 한루 세우레세 어디에나 셈 깨부치 대도 시죠 안디만디 강근이 줘래 땡수 버죠 셈 도저 타고 세우레세 하고 이제 가셔저 도셔저 지겨 말에 또 나한테 연구를 가요 말을 삼자 아르 타서단데 가디에나 버루질 간데에나 쇠통게 셔 가요 말씀 소소 셈 한루시 기부치 대도 연구 어딘데 탑시 제고도 야 뒤지시네 리버시
Mhm. Mhm. So here, the real cause for our unhappiness is being preoccupied with the 8 worldly concerns. So much as we are invested in those 8 worldly concerns, so much we will become unhappy. If, say, we have some sort of loss of our wealth, that creates unhappiness. Or if we have some kind of gain, we feel a great happiness at that. If someone praises us, or we have a good sort of reputation, we feel a lot of happiness at that. Or if others criticize us, we might feel a great deal of unhappiness. And so here, when we have that sort of fluctuation, where if we hear good things about ourselves and we get really sort of attached and happy about that, or if we hear bad things and we get really unhappy at that, we should recognize that it's not that there's something out there that is good or bad, but rather we are creating our own mental unhappiness. We should recognize when, say, we have a loss or we are criticized, that this is the nature of samsara, that this happens to everyone. We can't get so wrapped up if we are worried about what others say and like think that, oh, they're criticizing me. No matter what, we should sort of do as we are going to do. If we're doing good, we're doing good. And it doesn't really matter what other people say. So we have this normally sort of preoccupation with what the kind of criticism and praise that others give us. But it's really not that their words, again, as Shantideva has described, that their words have the power to create suffering for us or create happiness, but rather it is our mind that is creating the kind of harm that come from others' words. So some will say that what we're doing is good, or some will say that what we're doing is bad. We shouldn't have a kind of preoccupation with that. And it's really about sort of like toughening up the mind, being such that you're not so easily disturbed by every little thing, that whatever kind of comes up, good or bad, one is able to bear with that without getting so easily affected by it. So having this kind of sort of toughness of mind, being able to be less disturbed by the things that come, is really how we are able to reduce the kind of fuel for our anger.
야, 다들 그래. 어디에 가서 당가라서 단도 밀리톱네. 저주발라 텔로 이제 강간 좀 봐. 딘데 끼와서 톱대요 알도. 연주를 깨요다. 내고 예세도 버셔를 시켜 놓고 되고 쌓아야다. 대신 뭐도 겨 줍지야 그 고급이 오마로. 단단 가라서 끼와대 않고 고급상 붙이소서. 야부전에 야로 삼나 뇌 역시 지혜에 라왕 그 배유는 내버려. 안데 라왕 주지 내버려야 돼. 라왕 연계 팀배 저쪽에 저치마 편집다 가르치기네. 배유는 내버. 야부지 고급라디오. 어디 넣고 이 주술을 마다하세. 저와 친구 저와네 저와 연주기 밀려야 아이 하다 미 저와 상부 주주배 땡겨버리세. 안당 알아서 개와서 하셔버지 이제 부디 마음 봐놔야 오늘 공도 빼야 된다라. 저와 친구 제봐. 하다 미 저와 상부 주주 밀려 저와 상부 주주배 달이야. 니 메게와 줘봐. 저와 주 장래 봐봐. 와 어디 계셔. 저치 말하다 메고 봐. 봐도 봐. 오사. 마탐나 양에서 마케네 아니 제게요 말. 안다 고급 상부 시부지래. 예신 부시부지래 삼제. 저치 마케제. 미달라래. 유튜브에서 봐. 오늘 공도 빼. 근데 또 왔지. 대체도 메게와 줘봐. 연락처에 메게와 줘봐. 저치. 예서. 대사 많이 바르면 아니 라다 메게와 유니 대하고 와르 바틀레 동에 마부여라. 아다 메레 동에 요라. 진 타르투네. 동에 대달레게 타르바시. 왜서와 염모바 다메바다. 동반이 세야 돼. 검지. 작당 방식 하던다. 해봐. 자신이 지어야다. 강화 지어야 돼. 작당한 게 염모바. 작당 매바지 자수는 짜좀 버셔요. 타르바트. 어제 작당 방법을 짜좀 봐. 말아도 다쇼다 현쇼다 시도받다 나와시죠. 근데 맹게 차서나 근데 세바 매는 레를 소했답게. 그다음 류스는데 매로와. 매도니 겨울에 매서. 왜 겨울랑 말. 근데 라와치니 또 컨디션 진행은 제이버죠. 어디도 타르바토 버스. 지금 유튜브에 예산부 방아지 또. 네. 예송게 동해에 타봤삼. 애다 녀무베 샹와도 전에 기치를 라와메 바텔레 타르바시 그래서 이던달이야 작당방 발이야 되니 티모 미시베 몽바세네 다음에 발라서 봐 시럽 동반이 또 시럽을 써봐 돌리잖아 아니 타르바토 바시 그래서 타르바티야 되니 라치부 타르바토는 좀 말했어 근데 파마니에 드스베 라와사사 어때서다 왜냐다 저 통만배반에 통에 단다 냐마온보다 냥댕게 바삼로코나 건줄레티 밴드 삼로시 오그래도 이제 다냐 코알레 텐도 타르바시 되네 파마스 센디찬 냐마리 저왕아시 저왕아만나서 파마 마주베 셈쟁이니도 마주로 메게르샤도와 인도 가서 심지어 강간 저와 요된게르시 텐들리 샤샤네 이게실 펜통 어디 인생 개발이셨어도 다시 람가서 거를 가셨던도 답고 가셔 못했어 다시 강바지하고 어렸는데 제 미션다 그 틀릴 때는 라초 땡거시래 되어라 지기지 봐 팬통게서 로봇이 된 것을 사고요 근데 그 인생 개발이 안가 저 근데지 람보이나 고치기실 때에 땡기 거들 때 오고야서 되도 근데 삼을 단도 강간 좋아요 버렸어 어디 인도 가서 심지어 인노죠. 심지어 이제 사마탐제게 랑도르기 내 타르신 것 동해를 타러 왔지 또. 근데 그것이 연대 군대인지 이부 산지에서 Rankin Gusi Yande Kunde, Landor June Sama Kinge, Changi Trubal Yandiba Toba Meba Yinget, Rekansa Jura Chavi Samgore, Pache, Tarambo, Urimbo, and then go to about to see. Namsanda Cheto Marani, got some getting Yarta, or Sanji Kobanchi nature towards us. Yeshidone, Union some Zakuno Santa Mr. Do you let me do that? Yeah, according to the under.
Mhm. So right now we have all of the kind of freedom, the leisure, all of the sort of conducive conditions to be able to practice the Dharma. If, for example, we were born as an animal, we don't have the kind of independence, we don't have the ability or the autonomy to be able to continue to practice the Dharma or to continue or to sort of improve those qualities that we have. So right now, while we have all of these things, a good life, a good rebirth with the freedom and a kind of harmonious, conducive conditions to be able to practice the Dharma, we shouldn't waste that, but rather we should be thinking about getting a good rebirth as a human or a god. And such, if we do, we're able to then continue to increase those kinds of good qualities that we have developed. And the basis of this is then by holding to an ethical conduct wherein we abandon the 10 non-virtues, abandon any kind of harm to other beings, and engage in virtuous actions. So thinking this way, we should think, I need to get this kind of good opportunity in the future, again, in order to be able to continue to engage in the Dharma, to continue to improve these sorts of qualities. So therefore, I'm going to abandon the 10 non-virtues and engage in virtuous actions with the thought that I want to get a good rebirth lifetime after lifetime to be able to continue to develop these qualities. But going beyond that, again, we see that even gods and humans are subject to suffering. And this is what allows one to see that even those kinds of rebirths are still within the nature of samsara. And so therefore, in order to get out of that kind of situation, one needs to meditate on selflessness, on emptiness, in order to get rid of our attachment and aversion. By getting rid of our attachment and aversion, we gain the state of an arhat, the sort of freedom, the liberation from this cycle of uncontrolled rebirth. But here, if we get rid of these ideas of like our side and the other side, the sense of sort of craving and attachment for ours and the kind of aversion toward the other, getting rid of that craving and or sometimes referred to as grasping, there's no sort of ability to ripen those kinds of karmas that we have created in the past. And so there's no longer taking rebirth within samsara. So again, by sequentially taking good rebirth after good rebirth, we are able to continue to develop such that we can remove that kind of attachment and aversion, get rid of this fundamental ignorance as well as the attachment and aversion that arise from that. But again, to just gain our own liberation, we think this is not sufficient, because if we look around, we can see that all of these sentient beings that are like the mother and father that we've had in this life, they're sort of as kind as those mothers and fathers. We look at the fact that first, all of our sort of existence is dependent upon the kindness of others. There's no way that we can sustain ourselves or live without the kindness of others. And also when we think about the fact that we have taken countless rebirths, there's not a single being we can point to who we haven't been close to, who we haven't had that kind of close relationship with. And so this sort of special kindness that others show us, we're actually very interconnected with them. We're dependent upon others in this life in the sense of we need them for our shelter and our food and for all of those things. But we also have been connected to them in previous lives. And so recognizing this, seeing the special kindness of other sentient beings, we give rise to this wish to be able to benefit them, to have the ability to help them through knowing completely the points that are to be adopted and the points that are to be abandoned. And so it is with this kind of thought that we give rise to the intention. I wish to become a completely enlightened Buddha, one who has eliminated all faults and who has gained, developed all good qualities, such that I have the ability to lead other sentient beings through knowing what are to be adopted adopted and what is to be abandoned. And this is the kind of attitude that we should take, but having this sort of sense of long term, deciding that lifetime after lifetime, we are going to strive after that kind of goal. And for that purpose, then we should set our intention thinking, I'm listening to these teachings in order to be able to eventually attain that state of perfect enlightenment.
Oh, yes, that is. I got to the cassette on my loss and do that. Jiden go babu all like a boss at him. Jiden go babu was doing Jigde, the Mulin de Sukanga Songangi. Go babu said the Songangi to Niti. Jiden Chebabu on Jula Soba. Oh, Tizu. All like a bashi. And then in my. At the Toma Meban, Rangjung, Jiden go babu Suda. Toma Mebane. Rangjung, Jiden go babu Suda. I to the Necasa. Bhagavan Sura, Bhagavan. From there is wrong, I just from there. I took a Bhagavan the Kalingra, Bhavan Nambale Yore, in a Bhavan condition. It's someone Jigdangi Nelu Lonjo Kanga Kurang, Rawachan, Yoshaba, Yoshabati Kalinga Mara. At Toma Meban, Ranjung in Jigdango Babu, Hamje, Soshibe, Seme Kibushi, Yona Sigora. Someone Jigdangi Nelu Lonjo Kanga Songangi. Rawang Tone Songangi, Soabu and its Semekibu, Soshibas, Zunamba Cheneka Soda, Langdurki name Maluba can be Semekibus. Then the day Soabos, Kanga, Jigden, Nelu, Lojo, Kanga, Koranga, Server, I'm just Soshibas, which is. Yet the Toma Meban Ranjung is about Ranjung, Rangshingi Korate. Jigden go babo, Jigden go babo songe. Hamje Soshebe Semekibu. She said Tamja Landurki name Maluvi Kimba Malasha. Jigden Nelu Lonjo de Kiwa Sange and Ramada Sama Koran Sugiara. Tamja Sosheba Asgora. Soshebe Semekibu Shiyanase. And that any ranking o Tagbata Mitagba Kandrashi Ya Ranjungi Semekiburu. Mirua yes. Oh, Tita Yena. Tamja Soshenge. Rawachangi to the Shuvena. He ragging all Tagbareta, Mitagbarese. Tagba Imbashi, Rongumari, Mitagba Imbashi, Rongumari Sigara. Adesina Tagba Mitagba, Andrashiki, Shiki Ya, Rangjungi Semeki Imbati Rongumari. Arjen Resni Chuse, Angashina, Jurochengi, you Mitagba Togbe. Sheba boy in Besse. Go Zambulingi, there's little Lonjola Soba, the Zukanga Junduara, Joa Menda Menda Yunguare, in Junduguesa, or I summoned and Jurgen Jurgo, or Tati Reso, Tati Sogodo, Tati Sogodo, Tati and Resogosa, but in Jurgora, Jura Mabase, you have your mother. Angeshenase, Jurachengi, you Medabatona, Kora, you Medaba, you can go Juran Dongajarwa. Into Tati Koranga Sogu Yore, and it Tadis, Tadi Jurs, Titi, Tadi Sogu someday. Sheba de Jurasha Mato, Tapachuma Resevara. In a Sheba Midawachine, Teletembe Kasani, Takbaran Juji, Yunguma Resevar. Ageshenase, Jurashan give you Midabar Tobe, Sheba Boy in Besse. Karene, you think Jurachan Sonsa, Jurati told any Koran Jundu Godes or you say what I'm Missavas. Nicare. Yeah. You say what I'm Missavas. Just go some door. So niche. You are Savada Missava kabri yebacha kabri mebacha yorwa sewa da mesewa tolese ni te yudu jinge sama telaya sheba telaya kabri yudu sengen je kabri yudu mesenge re tende chandu de sora yudu chebe sama te ya te kenge se yun yura shimbe wange yu ngar yewa da meba da ramenda chaya de ne sheba de timenda te thon tanya timme thon sha tende chide medaba yin ko de sora kelaya e kenge midemba so yoko be takbar merun la so takbar rung ma re se arse yun jura che kanga de to ko de ke ba de nyam do jura do de se ko do o ti chi ju na
So then picking up where we had left off in the text, this is on page 40 in the English that says the analysis of the nature of a divine creator. So here, this is again, we're analyzing the idea of some sort of divine creator who has brought forth the whole world, who has the capacity to create all of that. So here it says, if an authoritative being who knows how to create everything, a self-existent divine creator of the world, exists from beginningless time, such a being cannot have a nature that is either permanent or impermanent. So here, when it comes to this idea of an authoritative being as someone who the Buddhist idea of an authoritative being, when we use the word like Bhagavan, this idea, the language can overlap with these other ideas, but the nature of that being is very different. The Buddhist Bhagavan is not a creator of the abodes and beings and the various possessions within the world, but rather the Bhagavan is an authoritative being in the sense of knowing irrefutably, incontrovertibly, all of the points to be adopted and to be abandoned. And so this idea of a creator here is someone who knows, an authoritative being who knows how to create everything, who is self-existent, and they're existing from beginningless time. And so then one is analyzing whether or not that type of being could have a nature that is permanent or impermanent. Here saying neither is valid. So here, this sense of a divine creator is a being that is sort of autonomous, that is authoritative from the beginning, like having this ability to bring forth all of the various things that exist within the world, the abodes and beings and their various possessions and so forth. But if this being is then asserted to be permanent, why is it that it could not be permanent? Well, such a creator would have to cognize objects that undergo change, impermanent objects. As such, his valid cognitions of objects that are sometimes clear due to distance and so on, and sometimes unclear, would thereby be changing and unstable. And therefore, as this divine creator's mind is changing, he cannot be called permanent. So when it comes to the various different objects within the world, the various sorts of abodes and beings and the possessions and so forth, as these things are varied and different, this being that is creating them would have to cognize these various impermanent things, thus sort of changing state, thus negating there being any kind of permanent self-existent sort of being. So if it's the case that this creator deity is sometimes say engaging in a particular object or thinking, oh, I'm going to create this and then create this, that sort of impermanence, engaging with impermanent objects, would negate his being permanent, his or her being permanent. So because there's sometimes engaging with certain object and sometimes not, this then would not allow such a being to be called permanent.
oh yeah that on that day takbar ran jung che me ji rung ma re se yun da me da ye ba da me ba cha ya ta ni kanga yun da me da kanga so go ra assembly jora do de ka sa de lan jora do de takbar che wa sing ma re se sa mi da ba yin gen ge takbar ran jung che me ji bu so shen ge ye de ma re se takbar rung ma re me da ba rung ma re se ni ga ka yor yang de me da ba ran jung ge che me ji bu ru ya me ru se me da ba yin gen ge am je so shen ge ran jung ge me ji bu yin ba de rung ma re se 주생 가르스네 강계시나 얘네 나지 코에 내가 강도야 녀몬바다 남장게 개 강계자 요라 상해든 주로하다 내바다 팬다서 마주베스 거기와 도마 매번에 서오라다 강계시나 되네 나지 코에 내가 강도 가두이나 행에마 가두이나 강도야 녀몬바다 남장게 녀몬바다 여와다 메게와라 소바 아와 상보 제바다 녀바 제바 강게 자 대왕게 니 텐데 주르레스 코셰 요마르도 마르게 내가 강도 양서라 녀몬바다 남장게와 남장게 개회 여와 강게 자서 아케메게 강게 자스네 되라 돌아 상해든 주르와다 고 개와라 컴디션 사우루 침버레스 야 메게와다 텐데리아 컴디션의 투루 침버레스 텐데게 셰 요마르와 엄마 매번에 고 텐데스 레디오 어디에는 알소다 텐데레 고베 주셈이 도스기와도 돌아 상해든 주르와다 네바다 팬다서 마주베스 그 토마 매번에 랑게 링다 나메 케베 작대다스 당분이네 그 작대인 게 시게 작대인 게 링정가마가마 그 방아제 코를 라와지는 용되게 작대 군진이베 탐제 소신게 그 군진이발라 주생 가야매라 주생 메도세와라 네네 찔리 장네 텐데션 당부 텐데레데 장장 장네 텐데 차버르세야니 요 말도 당분이네 고랑 간다 강가 코아바체 바코지데 고란 텐데스 간데 차르세와라 올 팬에 개개 요 말아 딱바랑 중이나 여와질레 상보제보다 냠바제보다 기디길레 제벌서와 인데 왕긴 주어도네 레바네 마르와세 그 텐데 주레 유세메도 아세와 함제 소신게 딱바랑 중기 세메 엄마 매번에 텐데 이게 남부 산제부터 지네 고 산제 망부케 링기라 좀 내서 바고한테 망부케 링기래 이내 그때서 강가데 나를 당분 알아서 나시체더니 장장이 야르야르 치니야 그세세 연대 군대서 랑도르지네 말루바 kimbe 은지레마도 탐제 소신게 군지시 요마 내로로지 겨안다면도 강가 송게지기 요르비오마 이 산제 주레디 토마 매번에 산제 인바시 요마로 부산제 멤버실이야더니 저바 야르야르치 이디글랑도 야르야르치네 하다 밀레치네 야르야르치 아르바 톱티네 테 산제 코바 톱지야 근데 유르소르도 나라저 고 야부체네 테다나신 조리야 예버시 teleng요라 어디마도 가족 그디네 두부두부체 깨발래 이데 당분이네 상부체 대야는 가족 빠가선데 아바선데 가르쳐서 이뭐 현다지 가르쳐내서 무슨에서 돈도선에서 냐월다나 이달다나 돈도다나 가가 라와체치네 나라저 네가게 메도 다케라시에스 때때레 아주 텐데 메시게와라 라졸은 네바요 산지 그리스 템지라시고서 만는 로브로아스 아주 산지네 신주리아 예스 되게 어다 아야 멜라스 에나 지더레 링당아말레케베 미탁베랑 중기 지된 거바보 거바보 세메기부로 지더로 세메기부로 말해서 와라 링당아말레케베 미탁베랑 중기 지된 거바보 세메기부로 롱기 말해서 와라 그다란 세만남들레스 어디지 요샤난 세만남들시들
No. So, here, then again, the first of these refutations is if there is a self-existent, kind of permanent creator, how could it be that they create impermanent sort of objects? That would mean that the kind of interaction or engagement with those objects, how can you have a permanent, kind of mind, or a permanent being able to interact with impermanent objects? And so that negates, that a divine creator's mind, so therefore, as this divine creator's mind is changing, he cannot be called permanent. And then it negates following this both the other proposition that such an authoritative being could be impermanent either. So here it says why? Well, at no point in such a being's history of passing through cyclic existence would he or she have been benefited or harmed, or would he or she have become virtuous by cultivating virtue, or non-virtuous by being caught in the afflictions. So here, just to continue one more sentence, nor would he or she be omniscient and free of attachment due to the production of a sequence of similar types from beginningless time. So here, when it is asserted that this authoritative being is beginningless, it is a self-existent kind of creator that has been the same since beginningless time. This would mean that there's no way to sort of become good through doing good actions or bad through doing bad actions. There can't be a sort of this being is not the way that they are due to the development of some sort of qualities or being benefited or harmed by any kind of virtue or afflictions, but rather they're beginninglessly like this. They have since beginningless time been an authoritative kind of a being. So there's no cause to that. There's no training if from the beginning that they are like this, they are self-arisen and autonomously kind of arisen in this way as an authoritative being, then there's no sort of training that is based upon this. There's no way that they're affected by engaging in virtuous actions or engaging in the afflictions. So here, if a being is self-arisen in this way, beginninglessly self-arisen, then there's no way that they can be sort of affected by any kind of causes or experience benefit or harm from things. Now, again, the Buddhists assert that there is a kind of authoritative being, this Bhagavan, but this Buddha became a Buddha based upon cultivating particular causes. It's not as though this being, and again, a Buddha Bhagavan is one that is omniscient, not as these who assert a creator would assert a creator that is omnipotent, knowing how to create everything, but rather a Buddha is omniscient. And it is the case that a Buddha was once like we are, and based upon training, based upon engaging in particular causes, a Buddha became a Buddha. And so if we follow after, if we too do these things, then we too can develop into a Buddha. We all have this Buddha nature. Again, as is repeatedly said, the nature of the mind is clear light. The stains are adventitious. We are able to then, through our own kind of effort, create that sort of change. But for those who are asserting a kind of creator being who is self-existent, it says again, therefore there could be no authoritative being who is both a self-existent creator of the world and also impermanent in the sense of arising from a sequence of previous similar types. So although a Buddha can come forth through cultivating those causes of a similar type, developing those, if a being is a self-existent creator, there's no way that they can be impermanent into the sense of arising from various causes. So we'll follow with the quotations from Dharmakirti.
Oh yeah. Ade kong de long tang ge da de. Chama nam de nal de song sha se. Wa te da ran chama nam de le se. Chama tak ba ni me se. Ji den gen go ba bo ro. Or ju de. Ji den gen go ba bo tak ba rang jung ge chame ki bu yin cha ra. Tak ba rang jung ge tam je so she be. Chame ki bu se ra. Tak ba rang jung ge tam je so she be chame ki bu ma re se ra. Chama tak ba ni yo ba ma re se te ma re se. Are na. Takba ina ni gyura meba shi kore, ili gyura yores, ngoye takba chashires. Yu ngobun dhamma kanga sewa tan besi yoba tan meba tan gyura doa kanga togu yora. Ini dhamma kanga chogu yorda kurake samrutane chogu yora. Tati kukudu, titi seven, titi setesu kanga chito. Ini samla gyura doa. Kebali gyura doa, kansala gyura doa. Yu mi takba dhamma gyura wanga chi gyura doa re, seme seda. Ni dhamma soku be chane tate soku ti sam. Ni kiti meba soku yin samsa tinte shide. Juan doku ra, sangma soku irda. Chala chik marwa, chala mamwa, zambul ni changa yo mar, jiden kam changa yo mar. 그래서 강가 속으라 이된 감레를 제바보레를 샤게 마라 함자 소시베 찌랑이 구지라 이 상마 속으네 된 요아 치슈 쉐베지고라 상마 마부 쉐베다게 쉐레 되어라 이데 때 딱봐 인게게 딱봐 랑중게 탐자 소시베 군지데 요아요 말이에서 주로진 셰지 인고래 윤담메데 강가죠 네 윤담메데 강가 세와데 메세와 여바데 메바 강가 에메세도 코란라인 주안도 그래 딱봐 연구 말해서 그래 아마 딱봐 니 메세 왜 딱봐 세시다 딱봐 랑중게 세메기 뭔지 된 거 봐보세요 이된 소아보 함제 소신경게 세메기 뭐 딱봐 랑중 어떤데 여봐 알았네 유 그저 강가 코란 속고 유 강가 세와다 메세와 미다 과래 주안도 되는 코란 냠도 아디레서 디레서 관도 왜 딱봐 세시 and Dambu Motu Mabashet, and the Motu Rachel, the Motu Shons. The Motu Mabashet, that the Mabasogus and Mabasogora. In the assembly, Jorado, the Takbaran Junji on Singamatis. You'll enjoy Wangi, Koran and Joan Dogore, you enjoy Koran Tangore, in the Metaba Mother on Shamatis. Shecha Metapani, Jitini Medani Shoros, etc. You Shecha Metapani, Joan do the same as Ella Sobada. 여바다 매발을 써본데도 네티 코란에 주어도래 코란 소아보인 배찬이야 예수티 마스티데 삼탄티 미다바레서 미데바인 고래 딱바라 좀 말해서 야드니 레세 아참만남데 미다바이 딱바라 좀 세메기보 용식 말해서 남게 펜다 참미신 미다나야 참미 코란 당분이네 남방게야 예수 간데시게 요아제네 팬타와다 안겐바제네 드는 네바 중야를 써보 팬네 간에 지야 요 말하셔라 남게 팬다 참미셔 안데지게 기딜라 써보다 레상보다 겐발라 써보 그나 팬타보다 네반드야 요 말 그나 뜬데 간에 지 많이 오래 네 땅바란 중그 참미 하셔라 남게 팬다 참미셔 미다나야 참미니 미다바 이나야 어버란 중게 하셔 함제 소시베 메기부 용 말해서 그래서 남바 상제부에 나고 상제 켈랭그라 바구안의 켈랭그라 좀 대세에 따라 바구안 켈랭그라 이나 바구안 당매 봐요 이네 이제 함제 소시 소아보 말해 함제 소시베 그래서 가가데 내 상부제는 소수 펜타네 내름 야르야시 두부제는 마냐고 이다들 두루두루 미네 타그라 소스들 야부진이 야르야도레 두부젠 투르둔레도가 남방가시기 자와 상부제바데 펜다보다 바세바랄 네바죠 요라 네 사하루 당해르도 요라 타고란 중기 니 네 제바보데 함제 소시바데 틴데 도야케 요 마르와시고 다야데 네바제 카게 중요 마르와 응을레 가디네 중요 마르와 당분이네 틴데시 용구베 주세요 마르스 남게 펜다 참미시 메다나야 참미니스 메다바 딱바란 주고 참미기 위해서는 대안직 말해서 어떤데 상부 유래기 거의 펜다바다시 데다 데체네 상부 유래세요 말아 어떤데 가야 펜다셔도 너저 가야 저강 펜는 데게요 말에 당분이 틴데 가르게래 래 유르기 말해서 예송바다로 어디서 남나 단단히가 뒤지 마시고도
So then the source for this is quoting from Chandrakirti's commentary on valid cognition. And here it states a permanent authoritative being cannot exist because he or she has valid cognitions that realize impermanent objects. So to assert, those who assert some kind of creator of the world, Ishvara or whoever it may be, they are asserting someone who is a permanent self-arisen kind of being who knows knows how to create all of these various things. And so if they're fabricating this entire myriad world, and it's not just this one world that we have, but there are multiple infinite world systems, they would have to sort of create all of these various things by realizing the objects, fabricating, okay, I want to make this, and then I want to make this, and I want to make this. And that would mean that their consciousness would change. Those objects are impermanent. And if they are having thoughts or engaging with those various impermanent objects in these countless world systems, it would take many different thoughts in order to create all of these various worlds or universes. They have to engage in all of these various different objects. But if you assert a creator who is self-arisen and permanent, there's no way that that permanent kind of creator can have a time when they're engaging with an impermanent object or not engaging with that. There can't be those sort of differences of state. And so all of the various kinds of objects within the world, how could a creator who is self-arisen and permanent create those kinds of things? Like if there's a war and then they think like, oh, I want to stop that war or something, there needs to be those different sorts of times when those objects are clear or unclear. Things exist at one time and not another. And so thereby this sort of authoritative being, again, a permanent authoritative being cannot exist because he or she has valid cognitions that realize impermanent objects. His perceiving consciousness is not stable because its objects are impermanent. And so because those objects are impermanent, there's no way that the consciousness realizing them, that being that is supposedly self-arisen and a creator of all things, could have a permanent self-arisen creator, could have a time when they realize something or don't realize something. That would make them too impermanent. And it also continues in the next verse saying, because he or she is not benefited by a variety of things, he or she is not an authoritative being who is impermanent. So again, this being that is asserted by these particular schools, they would say that this being is self-arisen as an authoritative being. And so there's no way that they are benefited by virtue or harmed by non-virtue. There's none of that because this is a self-arisen authoritative being. Again, for Buddhists, they would say that there are Buddhas, and not just one Buddha, one authoritative being, but countless. There's no kind of creator of those, but rather it is through the development of various causes. If we do good, positive things, we can improve, we can develop. If we do bad things, we will get worse. And so there's, if a being is considered self-arisen, sort of as they are from the beginning, then there's no way that anything could benefit them or could harm them. And so this again is because he or she is not benefited by a variety of things, they're not affected by various things, he or she is not an authoritative being who is impermanent. So these quotations from Dharmakirti, again, are getting at the negation of a permanent or an impermanent kind of divine creator, how neither of those are logical.
뭐야? 안 되려다. 이된 거 바보 예발라 똑바시도. 지대기 내를 론주 대화 상해를 소바데서 강가 도와보 지기 때문에 군지 지기 함제 소신게 군지 아바랑 중기 이부이나다 같은 데시 레버레스에 될 똑반데 누우시거라. 지된 거 바보 예발라 똑바시거라. 다른 데서는 론주 바보 심제 롱죄바브 심제 상마도 롱죄바브 들어와 미단사다 들어라 소바다 다음에다 상마 용구라 예세 상마 롱죄바브 심제 라메라 와 롱죄제 내진지대 롱죄제 텔레페슈 생게게 내진지대 라메다 마부 용구도 다음에 대다라 롱죄발레 이두 중앙 대다 탐제세 단디 롱제제 심제 롱제바브 심제 담다 마부여도 여와이다 던두세 라세르버네 딱베 신감세 산제 신감세다 내르 망부여와 아나신게 롱제바브 지텔레 다나시여도 롱제바브 심제 롱제바브 심제 내르 remember 망부여라 당에 망부시오라 tarchimba da tarma longjeje ne jinjigde 너진 직내들라 당해 망보 요도 언제내라 소바 이다라 소바 당배신가 담에도 망보 용구라 롱제제 너진 직대면 담다 당매바 대달라 롱제발레 디두 중앙 디다세 다 대달라 롱제네 심제도서 롱제네 대화죠 거리 야가죠 거리 두가죠 대화도 통해 영웅체 대교하라 언데서 상마 탐제에서 와라 심지어 담배단디 상마 너진 직대 담배다 상마 대달 가실 야가죠 가실 두가죠 가실 머두죠 가실 기대시네 어떤데 대화 통해 중앙디 상마서 가라 이돈 중앙디 탐제 이된 거 봐보시게 지된 거 봐보 개랭게 소이나 지된 거 봐보 조선대 박완에서 오라 이거 서버에서 이 서버에 텔레 때니 좀 그거에서 그래서 요 상부 엠바다 지된 거 봐보 시기에서 그래서 시대 어디 네 지된 거 봐보 시기 시기에 제바 이나서로 단데서 사마 탐제 동경게 라와쟁게 송경게 니베 타르투기 연대 연게 소비 쇼시바 소시바 지금 서버 이나서 와라 또 바꾸고 열다 이된 거 봐보데 당이게 된 거야 매장 샬라 제베 대다르 제바 시인 거여서 어떤데 네버 첨부 강가에 소통게 지나 네 이된 거 봐보데 당이라 된 거야 뭐 소소랑되게 된다리야 네 가셔야가서 가셔 두가서 라면다 소야디 소구마로 하셔라 한테달 그런 다르신 버려 되어라 아니 이제 가야 매자소라 그러려 팬을 돼야다 더두에 개지 마로 하셔 대저 강가 샹라 제외 롱제제시 고도 섬 이된 라면다 소야디 강가 롱제바 보스 티chen 네 샹라 제와 그 꾸넬라네 제바시르 인고로 와시고라 샹라 제외 대달 제바시 인고요시고라 나와서 그 민행 버친 게르진 뜬든데 버친 보용 토요 말도 대단하 요 남게 네베 되세 저 제지나 요 참마그 네베 된원도다 이 상부 강가 제고래 멤버도 강가 소고 말어 와서 거라 현도 요 말어 누구로 왔던 지그로 와서 대단하 요 남게 네베 된원도 당원도 하다 미고 봐 요 토아들은 건 도서 거라 대다 제거바 인지서 아담메다네 대화 표승 소바티지 표승 소바티서 강가 제고로 아셔라 인지여나 네 맨데베 녜소 냐와예다 전돌 소바티서 네도 소주여 마로 아시고라 네 심제도 동에 양준에 텐데 소주여 마로 아시고라 맨데베 녜손 소다테 이두남 이시르체세 닝지 용계시네 또 가르치는 소그래 소 마로 아세라 아란절에 질레 왕절에 종이네 또 소고 말도 대신도 맨데베 지네다 동에 좀버체 그게세 근데 내가 용계시요나 함제 코나 라왕 돈에 소스tum 게시요나 네 맨데베 지네다 동에다 도 강가 매버 소고래세래 소고 소주요 말이세라 좀버체 그게 저 밤에버서 소주요 말다 매버서 담분에 소주요 말 대병원도 하다 미 깨와다 네 티기 표순서 받대 저 속으로 와셔라 대배 대병원도 라미 깨와다 에 대와 남지실 직받치 하다 미 대저 대와 여부터 좀 매버서 와내 상부도 좀 매버쳐야 돼저 가르치는 직받치 버렸어 미 대와 표순서 봐 시대다 지 대화다 타도 때저 강가 샤고로 봤어 저 매버서도 왔어 저 직받 가신 시거랬어 내가 저와다 어디 보듯이잖아
So here then turning to the next section, which is doubting the existence of a divine creator. So here it says living beings use the physical world, which then becomes their instrument. And from this interaction, their happiness and suffering arises. So here are all the various abodes and bodies and enjoyments, all that we have that's good and bad. We all of the sort of various types of beings, we enjoy various different environments. You the living beings are of various types, like hungry ghosts and hell beings and animals and humans and gods and so forth. And each of those beings then enjoys various kind of environments or abodes. And so living beings then interact with their physical world, which becomes this instrument then for the happiness and suffering that they experience. And so there are many different kinds of experiences one can have through the various interactions. So we see that in some places there's war and there's strife, other places there's peace and so forth. And so if it is as those who would assert a divine creator say, and someone created all of this, continuing on in the text, if all of these things were created by a divine creator of the world, this creator would create such things out of compassion for beings, not any personal gain. So this kind of creator being, if they have totally perfected their own aims, or they are a totally sort of perfect being, then they don't need to someone with this kind of ability to create all of the worlds and the beings within them and the various possessions and so forth. They don't need to do it for their own reasons, because they themselves are already perfected, but would be doing it then out of the compassion for various beings. And if that were the case, then he or she would create what beings want, birth into a higher life as a human or a god, and happiness within that birth. So if it were the case that this sort of creator being were able to create all of the abodes and environments and beings within them, why then would they not, if they're doing this out of compassion, only create those which bring about happiness, only bring about those kinds of good lives as a human or a god and happiness within those rebirths? Why would he or she create what no one wants, the miserable realms and their suffering? Likewise, he or she would want to destroy the worlds and their suffering that beings do not want. Why would he or she cause the destruction of those that which beings do want, higher birth and happiness? So if it is the case that then there's this autonomous being that is sort of able to act on their own, that is self-arisen, then why from the beginning, if they are a compassionate being, would they create such suffering kind of situations, or would they take away the good things that beings want? It doesn't really make sense. If they had the ability to create all of this world, all of these various worlds, then why would they create them with suffering? Or why would they create the kinds of causes that lead to suffering? Why would they not remove all of its suffering?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Shenya tsawadan denpa namne sigura. Shendala tsawadan denpa shi jiden guaba bodhi sigura. Akbar rawan sasan yunge jiden soa bodhi gise. Shenya tsawadan denpa namne jikdo shen mendebe tungeda tawar de jese. Tawa yuna shen mendebe tungeda trendu se tawa toba ge tabshi sigura wa sigura. Tungeji ju tsawa mirunga se. Tunge yunga ge judi zene yeba chigu marwa sugu marwa sigura. Ini tsawa chen ki chen gashi la tunge yugu nazo jimbam. Chen gashi la ta tunge mambu dowa nyawa yita tundri nanda mili nanda tunge mambu shibi wardo. Matu muki la sokpa ta chi. Deba naso yoro atazo karchen sugu yore sigura. Tsawa chen ki chen gashi la tunge yugu nazo jimbam kebar che. Kerangi sugu yore wase. Wala tanyam je nyingi chewara. Tewa dan mengelam. Sama tanyam yena ane kanga tewan duga tewa yeba nashi. Kanda tuzo tewan jungya tepsi chewar ma tungi tinde rangwa che ni keran suya yene karchen suwaras. 삼절이 니리 매배 땅념 매도 와시거라. 가실 야가시 가실 두가서 데서 데시거라. 가실라 동에 유군나서 두겐 담베라 뺀나서 와 김밤 깨버리시나. 오늘 땅념 개닝 저와라. 저와다 매게 람세네 닝지 유가 땅념 제고바 닝지 유가 어쨌든 계획도 와서 가실 야가시 가실 두가서 강화 차상 연애로 와. 소수 강화고는 지구나. 어디지라면
So, moreover, those with compassion, so if we have a creator being with all of the sort of ability to create everything, and a compassionate creator being, those with compassion only want to free beings from suffering, from what they do not want. Then it does not make sense that beings are looking for the cause of their suffering. So, would it not contradict having impartial compassion toward all if this loving God were assailing certain beings with intense sufferings? So, here, there are countless types of sufferings within the world and various sorts of abodes from, a hungry ghost all the way through humans and experiencing famine and drought and all the kinds of various suffering. There are countless kinds of sufferings that we experience. And it seems that if it were the case that this is a being who has compassion, and if they do have compassion, they should have compassion equally for all sentient beings. If it were the case, that such a creator being did have that kind of loving nature and impartial compassion toward all, why is it that then some experience suffering, some experience quite intense suffering, and others do not experience sufferings? Or why would it be that an autonomous being would be giving sufferings to these things that beings do not want to them, if it is the case that such a being has the autonomy, has the ability, it would seem to contradict their compassionate nature for beings to be experiencing these various types of sufferings.
몰라. 심지어 남게 최단 최마인바 제바 임베세. 다들 랭게베 소리처라. 제대로래. 가셔리아다 가셔 도 용해데. 그런저 심지어 저 최단 최마인 야가도 챙게도 최야부체네. 저 팀다 팀바 야야부체 샴페인 야부체 티레스. 그거도 저니 그런저 랭게바 사산 티레스 나시거라. 심지어 남게 최단 최마인바 제바 임베세. 최단 최마인바 제바 임베. 시텔라 때는 지된 거바부 심전남라 대화다 동해단 담바체도 냠나세 그나저 레상에 챤는 텔라 때는 지된 거바부 되게 가실야가다 가실도 제브르스 나시고라 대단한 지된 거바부 라와게 대다라 제방게 신신네 라와게 지된 제바부 쓰고도 라와게 제바르면 도와서 그런저 레상에게 왕게네 제고에 대도 와서라 이네 고랑 라왕게 제밖에 말아 고랑 레상에 교환게 줘라 이네 남바게 텐드르지 켈링게 와라 이 켈링 대단한 지된 거바 라왕게 대다라 제방게 신스 야야 kögen 지네 진뱅아르 심제 메베 찔라 제베 뉴주나 침바이스 담부 가게 매는 그랑 사바서르 바서르 거바 보고 서라 지된 거바 보고 사바서르 바서 사바서이나 kögen jigden jimbe ngaru na tambu jigden soya ge nge ne ro tamlu ta ne simje mebe tambu simje yaga da duga da le sange chenge yo marwa jine sarwa sörwa inde kögen jigden jimbe ngaru jigden kebar chebe ngaru ne sura ngaru simje mebe tidu simje yo marwa eve nyuchu nam cheba yinse kögen jigden jimbe ngaru simje mebe jila eve nyuchu nam cheba sore tidu simje soyo maru tambu nyuchu jigden sobe wandu tanda sigo no ila long cheba bote soyo maru lebyo maru ane tiko simje medu zan telia long cheje di karchen sobe resi wara maso nen dirwa yabudan tuwa tindi tamende yeshindo chö mayin baya tambu ne köge chichirse ni simje tozu chöba ngemba de kerang soberwa jigden cheba bu soberwa asora Michoba ngemba che de tiba chenge de tambune maso na yaburo wasera. Tambune tende maso na ne tiba sange yongu maro. Tama ke wa yabutum ge sheji. Yoshana ne yagraba. E tene tambu sudu na ne tiba chenge soba te de medwa te sugi maro wasera. E cho yen jiden chen bengar simje mebe chi shir sewe nyuju nam cheba yin chi shara. Yeshan do cho mayimba tambune chi shir kyo ji chimbar che. Cho mayimba chenge de kasa do cho mayimba yade karjen soberte tambune maso na ane yongu maro wasigura. O dechi.
So then in response to that, it says like, is it not a contradiction that beings experience suffering and there being a creator God with this compassionate nature? And so the response to that is, well, living beings perform virtuous and non-virtuous actions. And based on this, the divine creator of the world causes them to be happy or undergo suffering. So here, the kind of response is that like good and bad acts, virtue and non-virtue, this is how beings experience their happiness and suffering. Again, this is someone who asserts there to be a creator God. And from those acts of karma, then, so from those acts, this creator God then gives them happiness or suffering. Now here, as far as the Buddhists are concerned, karma is what brings about our happiness and our suffering, those kinds of actions that we have created. But it's not as though a creator deity is the one sort of giving it to us. So the response to this is that if that is the case, that living beings perform virtue and non-virtue, and that's what leads the divine creator to cause them to be happy or undergo suffering, it is contradictory to say that the divine creator of the world creates things independently without depending on others. If it's the case that this is dependent upon beings' karma, beings' actions, then that contradicts the saying that the divine creator is creating this world independently in a way that doesn't depend upon anything else. So, and here too, furthermore, as there are no living beings prior to the divine creator of the world creating them, out of compassion, for whom does the divine creator create beings and their environment? So if it's the case that you're saying that the divine creator is in the nature of compassion, if they are newly creating all of these beings, for whom do they have compassion? First, they would create the world and then those beings within it. So how could you say that they have compassion for those beings before they've actually even created them? And likewise, why would the divine creator of the world create non-virtue from the outset? If it is the case that the creator made everything is prior to beings and the various actions that they take, wouldn't it be better if the divine creator just did not make non-virtue, did not make negative actions? Why would it be that a compassionate or this kind of loving creator would make something that then is going to lead to beings' sufferings?
Oya tadelia untangdo. Eme de kone dibena roa. Provision dirashteges. Eme tatu sankarnar sunsha asigura. Adezu ko sonye dezu kangati lo nyeto abje duti nges to vanero. Abje tuke na to vane. Anje chum dende ko ti sorto. Talu chang ben do ta to suna lenji den goba bodi. Elen batin digmare ti sonye orba. O te juk ab ke su ma shege orda. Saba son shege omar. Tedarian chedu lese. Ede tebe che jurnase. Tebe kone ne jin jiden da chuji simjen to sebe yenasan jiden goba bo. Wonju la soba te da ge siwara. Roa chidu tewar jusen. Roa sama tewa janja ma do tungen de ka sogo ma roa siwara. Chidu tewa sogo ese. Tewa yena tebe chewe na. Ne da u da nyange so. Tungen tume siwa ne nazo na ya da. Enjo kange yoba da. Mautu mukila soba te nyange yong da. Nyawa yeda tundula soba. Tume siro ye. Tunge tumagi pa. Naro yongu doa simjeta. Kewa jimbati kanga kewa tuzu kanga keba bugu jimbati. Jibati ndri mendo asi wara. 대완 짐바리 제바데 짐바세라 결아 짐바데 제바데 예수 세와 지다르시 왜 그네란데 쇠베네 때서 써야 되는 분도 스튜디오 마루아시고라 짐뱅하나 닌지유 내나 제제 테마에세 짐뱅하나 너진 지된데 수도 무슨 제요 마루 담부 너진 지된 서르와세 이도에네 심제도 요 마라시네 소주르와테 야부 잔자 소샤네 야부 요르와세 짐뱅하나 닌지유 내나세 제제 테마에 이도 자와다 네바다 텐데 생게고 요 마르도 제수 세베 세바데 teg마도 제수 세와 요나 정말 야가마도 두와데 용고 마르와서 그라 이 콩디 당겨라야 제다 양 땡이래 이네 세단 대인도 대냠도 대샤도 제다 양 땡간 데네 세단 대이나서 세와단 덴베코네 세바이나 엘라 땅님 자와 레세 네 셴달이야 테네 땅님 찍바지 야가 장자 소네 소바로 마도 가셔 야가다 가셔 누가 써야 돼 심지어 정말이야 땅님 매버리기도 땅님 자와 되 그를 와서 정말 야가 쏘고 그래 동시가
So then, as a source for this is Shantarakshita's the Compendium of Reality. And here, this comes like maybe 1,500 years after the Buddha, but it's continuing the sort of thought of the Buddha. This is following after the teachings of the Buddha. And here it says then, if he or she created them out of compassion, beings would only be happy, yet they are beset by untold sufferings, such as sickness, poverty, and sorrow. So here again, if it is the case that there is a divine creator deity who creates all of the beings of the world out of compassion, the world and the beings within it out of compassion, why would they then experience suffering? If it is the case that this being has a compassionate nature, it would be the case that they would only want beings to be happy. They would only give them things that are good. But yet we are beset by all kinds of sufferings of sickness and poverty, difficulties of having wealth and sorrows and so forth. And so here then, it doesn't make sense that a compassionate being would create such suffering. After creating such a life, how can we say that he or she is compassionate if there's so much suffering involved in it? And then continuing, it says, before creation, there are no objects of compassion. To be compassionate after creation makes no sense. So how can you say then that a divine creator created all of this out of compassion for beings if the divine creator has not yet created those beings for whom he has compassion? So that makes no sense to have this sort of being become compassionate after creation if you're saying that it's the compassion that is the nature of this being. And so also, if such a creator has compassion, that compassion must be impartial. It wouldn't make sense for this kind of divine being to create good for some and bad for others, good for only some and bad for others, if they are in the nature of compassion. That compassion should then be impartial.
Yeah, yang jiden goba beese ni chu na so tu na so de da me chu do goba yena se darna ya de dam da yo de kanga jo ne chu da ge chen mu se ba na shin che ne ko tin de chi ya de tin de se che ko tin de che ne se ba yena se ora mu chen ge so pa jo de kar che so ta ya chu jo de te che te da ge mu che ge ora o tin ne shi che mu che be se o tin de chen se ba yena se ora yang ji den go ba be ni chu da tu na so ba de da me chu de ko ba yena de da na ke wa da ne ba da ji ba so ji me ta na so la te na se ne pa jo de da chi lu na so la te ne su jo tin de che ko de ni ke ra de che ba bo de rawa che re me do a se ora pa jo de le ta ge chi so ko ge chi re so ra de da na ke wa da ne ba da ji ba so me ta na so la te ne se ja go be se rawa che che ba bo ro me ro la ka la ro se am je so she ba rawa che se ora rawa cha za yo ge che ba bo ro me do a se 재무제가 나시 재무제도 가시 탑 가시 밤 뛴다면도 따그따그 전에서 요구하라. 어디 나시 제서에 나한테 뭐 도시거라. 제야 제야 재무탑 나줘라. 나줘봐 강요봐 대다 교제 더바다르 나도 제네바다 덴바 이나세 재무쟁게도 재무탑 나줘봐다 계란게 더바 나신제 라와진에 소야 여바 이나세 거라. 대다 지저 코네 제발 요라세 근데 정말 유직도 제발 자그래세 딱봐 랑종기 제발 보선자 땐 유라게 용마로 와세 딱봐도 좀 제부께는 유직도 되고라 유직을 계실을 마기버 랭가게 우리 마기 전에 고랑 교환도 위백해져라 그들은 교환도 와라 제발 보대 이제 제발 보대 딱봐 랑종기 제맥이 보세 삼제 조심봐 딱봐 인식고라 딱봐 이나니 되죠 용구 말으시고라 야 재미터 나서봐 강요봐 대다 교제 너바다 라와도 제네바다 덴바이나 대다 직접 코네 제발 줄그레세 딱봐 손자 그냥 뭐 것이 제바다 그라 네바 매발라 야 그리 기소네 이두자 치도 소야 네바 매바체 치소야한테 소야 네바 사도 레바이나 네 계란은 주화 연결된도래 제바보든 주라 연결 제바보 삼로는 주라 연결된도 딱바르기요 말해서 그냥 뭐 것이 제발라 방법교라 네바 매발라 시대 제베 네바된 덴버 주네 시소 메다메다 세바 이나스고라 림지 제바데 모르레세 에라디 악베 제바보 선자 악바 임베 교라 뚜응아지 함제도 대다시베 네발의 중세계 개발매발 복합실은 네바체로 신갑실은 네바 매바샤던데 제요 마로 딱와이나 복합도이나 네바여네 여여래 그 제부도 뒤직도 밖에 그래서 어디실라나
No. So, moreover, if a divine creator of the world made this variety of environments and the beings within them, as well as their happiness and suffering, in the experimental manner of a child at play, he or she would have to do so in reliance on a variety of methods that would sometimes involve production, sometimes abiding, and sometimes perishing. So if you sort of look at the divine creator, the way that they make this world is almost like playing a game. Sort of like there are times though when there are going to be sort of, as it says here, they would do so in reliance upon a variety of methods that would sometimes involve production, sometimes abiding, and sometimes perishing. So the nature of a game is sort of like that it's always kind of changing. You change in dependence upon the various things that are happening. So to assert a kind of autonomous, independent creator, and yet having contingency upon anything whatsoever is a contradiction, to have that kind of dependence or contingency. So when we're like playing a game, we're reacting or responding to the things that are happening. And so if that is the kind of way in which you're asserting a divine creator makes the world, that would again involve reliance on various methods. And so how could this creator be all powerful, making everything without depending upon anything else? They couldn't be, because again, this idea of like playing a game, there's contingency, there's dependent sort of times where something is happening or something is not, and so forth. And also, if the divine creator could create whatever trials or games in accordance with his or her wish independently, then he or she would have to make them all at once. But it also makes no sense if, in order to create something, the divine creator at one time does not have the power to do so, and then later gains the power to do so, creating in stages. For as the creator is permanent, he or she would not have even the slightest fluctuation in capacity to create that thing all the time, constantly, even in the past and in the future. So here again, if this kind of divine creator is someone that is permanent and self-arisen and autonomous, it's the case that there's there can't be sort of any fluctuation in the capacity to create things or to change things. So it can't be the case that at one time this divine creator does not have the power to create or make something come about, and later does have the ability or the power, because they're for a self-arisen and particularly permanent being, there can't be any kind of fluctuation in their capacity such that at sometimes they could do it or sometimes they couldn't.
뭐야 되죠. 야. 이거 조심해. 딱봐 임배 쫄랑아치 됐어. 아들 네 롱장 그도와. 임배. 얘들 인주 때문에 되시거든. 얘들 뉴주 인지된 담에다다 심전 담에다 잠불인 담에다 소에도 강가. 때문에 주도 세바이나스고다. 얘들 때는 죽바데 때문에 때문에 또 메세 때문에 생겨이네 대 라완도 전에 동계 쪽에 그 말이 세우라고 그게 딱이다기 제제 된다고 어떤 때문에 또 메세 네 소주시 때문에 또 메세라 때문에 탐네 나쪽 와서 때문에 제대로 탐 나쪽 거내려와 네特别前呢 보조도 수조 가게 때문에 날 때는 요도라 特别前呢 신호 신에서 때문에 생겨서 그리 탑 그리 때 티셔 강가데 먼저 때문에 다라래라 때문에 줍제 이거 때문에 줍제 탑 간다면 간다 줍시 간인데 대대 대신 는데나 이거 찌저리 제발 유르시에 소소 어데 어떤다고 때문에 탐내 나서 때문에 수지 서버에나서라 탐 나서라 봐줘 개밤 가른도 말도 따기따기 쳐서요나 때배치나 신노 신세 때문에 게 신노 나시를 가시 참자 파다 담마다 따기따기 쳐오래 때문에 두제 가간다세 때문에 두제 시 아저래 아저래 나 또, 아니지 어야 되라 안 돼서 때문에 탐내 나서 봐세 때배치나 신노 신세 때문에 두제 탐 가다 에 두지 강인데 대대 대신 는데나 이거 찍자지와 따땅마 되게 돈다 되는 시기도와 뒤에나 고 가서 딱 봐서 자고 아마 뒤치도 제발 줄 그래서 림디 제발도 연구 말해서 딱 봐랑 중기 제발 보이나스 대샤 된대서
Oh. So then there is a source for this, again, quoting from Shantarakshita's The Compendium of Reality. It says, if the divine creator engages in creation in the manner of a game, then there can be no all-powerful master of play, because he or she would have to rely on diverse strategies of play, like children. So here, if a divine creator is creating the world and the beings within it in this manner of like play, there's not possible to sort of depend upon the situation or to react to what the other side is doing. It's like when we play a game, we react based upon the sort of win or loss of the other side. There's sort of the various strategies that we employ. But if a divine creator is sort of self-arisen and autonomous in this way, then there's no way that they can be all powerful master and still need to rely upon various things. And then in the second the second verse, it says, if the creator has the power to make things by being a player who likes to win and doing what achieves that, then he or she would have to create all of this at once. So again, if you assert a kind of permanent permanent creator, if they always have that capacity to be able to create a particular effect, then they would have to do it all at once. So if they have the capacity to create, and that's unchanging, that's permanent, then they would everything would have to be sort of co-emergent, have to come up all at once, or they would never create that at all. So that finishes then the compendium of reality quote, and I think we'll stop here for today.
我也这就说，就早上啊，
The time is up, so that'll stop for now.
May the spiritual
Teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lovesome's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Mandala
个没有大呀，
Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
哎呀
Thank，you very much, Rinpoche.
就
And thank you.
Yeah, Tushena Gishla.
哎呀，
Tushena.
我说
Ando Jema Jeo.
哎呀，
Just a
Right.
brief note for anyone watching online, and that is that we'd like to show our appreciation for Ginla and Katrina on the Day of Miracles, which is March 7th. So if you'd like to join in that offering,
你上
please
面
check.
谢这个，哎呀呀，我这是啊。
Record